Good.
So welcome. And so is this a couple that you've brought up before, or is it a new couple?
That's the couple I've been seeing since May. It's also the couple that a different counselor at Ofir was working with. And I actually had a consultation call with him. Yes, we talked about the couple. We had the same kind of idea about what's going on, and now it's becoming more and more kind of in my face what's going on there.
Yeah. And so we've done a supervision around this as well before, right?
Yes, I think we had one supervision around them. Yes.
All right, so let's get started. You were telling me before we started recording that there was a meltdown. So anything you want to say to just set up? And we have a recording today. So anything you want to say to set this up, or do you want to just get into it, or what's your preference?
So I will just give a little bit of a background to what we've been doing together. And this couple had a lot of ups and downs, but the recent sessions, I would say the last 5 to 6 sessions, we started exploring the male partner's ADD symptoms and how they might be affecting the relationship. And we started building a lot of understanding around it on both sides, which was very nice to see. So there was definitely some progress. And for the first time ever, I could actually give enough room for the male partner during the sessions. We also had kind of like, it felt like we were making some baby step progress in terms of like their communication. So they definitely had moments where they would connect. Unfortunately, all those moments were conditioned by how the male partner would behave. So the male partner would always be the one assessed, kind of thing. And I've been struggling since the very, very beginning with the energy that the female partner brings into the room. She's clearly a pursuer. The male partner is clearly the withdrawer. But she takes over even in the session with her body language, with her tone of voice. And even when I'm focusing on the male partner, and well, she is respectful in the sense that she may not interrupt too much, but by like in the corner of my eye, I can see her body language, her just disapproval, constant dissatisfaction. And even when we talk about something positive, she and we are in a good kind of mood all together, because that also happened, which was very nice to see. She would have a tendency to go back to the negative cycle, kind of point at things that she really didn't appreciate in him. And my biggest struggle here is because she's very aware of her primary emotions. She also understands where they stem from. And I haven't got there yet, but I read a little bit like from Sue Johnson's articles on like how that awareness of the secondary emotions can be actually used to manipulate the situation a little bit.
Yeah, let me ask you about that before we move on. When you say she's aware of her primary emotions, but that we haven't gone there yet, can you say more about that?
Yeah, so and that's been a pattern throughout most of the sessions where we would actually discuss a challenge, like more challenging situation. And the client, the female partner, always knows, she's very good at identifying where her anger stems from, her insecurities. She connects that very quickly with her childhood as well. She's aware of that. But in many of these situations where she really like gets distressed and frustrated, it sounds like something she memorized, and she just quickly repeats it.
Got it.
every time.
So if I understand you right, essentially what you're saying is she's got a script, and she's when you say aware, she's got language for it, but she's
Yeah.
not able to connect with it and not able to share from that primary place. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you put
Good,
it
good.
this way, it makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Which is a very common issue for pursuers, especially
Mhm.
ones that are very intelligent.
Yeah, and
Right?
this is really the case.
Mhm.
And I also talked to Corey about this case, and he gave me a great like idea, just because we talked about how this female partner's energy actually affects me, and I feel like I always have to
Mm.
attend to her and validate her.
And
Which was,
if I remember right, her complaint was that with the previous counselor was that there wasn't enough attention on her, even though she was pushing for more attention on the withdrawer. Correct?
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
right, exactly that. And
Mhm.
I struggle. As I said, the before last Thursday, the previous sessions, like 5 to 6 sessions, were really showing some progress. I'm not saying there was a breakthrough, but there were some baby steps, and actually on both sides, there was some jokes coming up. It was just the atmosphere felt lighter. They could connect even by just laughing together at something that I wouldn't even get. They would have to explain it to me. So I really saw some good positive signs. I heard some positive stories compared to negative. So we had something to like balance things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when things go bad, one week, she gets into this like heavy distress. And for me, it's very challenging to actually separate myself from that level of distress. Actually, that Thursday, I had a really good day with all the other clients. That was the only one that really impacted me a lot, but I didn't think about it this much. And then at night, I started thinking about it, and it was just like a rumination about what the hell happened there. So I just kind of wanted to show you maybe a few pieces. We'll see how much we'll have time for, because like I'm just really curious what you'll say about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you a piece where actually she's kind of reaching her peak of the meltdown, and how she describes it. And she also expresses her needs very clearly, but she doesn't, sorry about something is coming in here, and I think they're cutting grass, so it might be a little bit loud for a second. But she expresses her needs really clearly, but she doesn't acknowledge the needs of the partner, obviously. And let me just wait here for a second. Sorry.
So let me say three or four things before you continue. So first, well, the last is easy. First, what are you looking for in the feedback from watching the video? Because there's a lot of different directions it can go, and a lot of different ways that we can pause and give commentary and that kind of thing. So think about that for a second, like the kind of feedback you want. And then let me say around the easier piece as well, around this sort of sense of what I'm hearing from you, which is going backwards, right? So sometimes we think things are kind of regressing or going backwards, but in reality, most of the time, what I see that's actually happening is they're just really letting you in on what is really going on at home. So in some ways, it's not really going backwards. You're just, someone's just coming in the room, so I'm just going to let them in here. Sorry. It's Sila, by the way, in case you're curious. She was a previous student of ours. Hi, Sila. We're just in the middle, so we're just going to keep going here, Sila.
Sorry, I was a little bit late, but I still wanted to make it, so yeah.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, so three things. So one, we're letting Pasea, she's going to be presenting a video. So to keep in mind what kind of feedback she's looking for. She's already presented the client. So the second thing is around regression, or what you perceive as like, you thought things were going well, and now it seems like they're not going well, right? What I would say about that is, one, what I already kind of alluded to is sometimes it's not really going backwards. Two things potentially. One is, like I said, they're just letting you see what their home life is like, and what you're getting closer to the truth, so to speak. And two, which is very related, is as we get closer, and in some ways, even in relationships, right? The first 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, honeymoon phase, things are fine. No real issues seem to creep up. But as that attachment, that bond gets built, then our historical attachment issues start to come up, right? Because not because we're not seeing everything, but it's actually impacting us more. So in this same way, as you're joining into this attachment couple and you're attaching to them and they're getting comfortable connecting with each other in your presence, and in some ways you're also connecting to that, then resistance comes up to, so as you said earlier, you're not getting to see, you're getting her to talk about her primary, but you're not seeing it in a way that's soft and the way primary is supposed to look, or does look when someone is vulnerable. As for someone that has a lot of trauma around that, think about it. The last time maybe she was sharing primary was when she was very young and it didn't go well. In fact, maybe it went really badly. And so there's a lot of coping that's attached to that and a lot of memories and resistance that gets created around that. So it's actually very possible you were getting very close to that. And that's why you saw what you saw. So it's just a piece around, I want to very much highlight when someone's saying that things look bad, it's not always the case. It actually needs to look bad sometimes before it looks good. In the same way, even in individual therapy, right? That we need to sometimes confront very uncomfortable things, and sometimes it doesn't look pretty. But then once we get through it, then we are able to clean it up. And if we can get to the other side, of course, then we can put it into context. And then the narrative around it can emerge as well around what transpired. But until then, everything seems really vague and it's very messy and all of that kind of stuff. So there's any kind of responses or thoughts about that?
No, that makes me feel a bit better, to be honest.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of that. I kind of at a certain point thought maybe this is some sort of catharsis where she really, offloads all that stuff violently, and to the point where I actually have to stop her and ground her, because that's what happened. She couldn't catch her breath. But that still was very difficult for me to accept, because I was just so overwhelmed with her reaction, and probably that was the strongest reaction since the beginning of she had many sessions where she would it would be her time, and she would start crying, very emotional. She would raise her voice. Her body language would show that she's nervous as well. So it was always this intensity in her. But last Thursday was definitely the strongest.
And you said six sessions so far or something like that?
Oh, now we are on more than that. Since May, I think we'll be at about, I haven't counted, so sorry about that, but definitely 15, 16, I'm not sure.
Wow. Yeah. So very motivated, very consistent, both of them then. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know she was seeing someone for years individually. That might be a person to connect, Julia. I can connect you after. You might get a little bit, it might be helpful around that because you'll get her perspective, because she's seeing someone else now individually, but she was seeing her for a long, long time, very consistently. Okay.
So that would be great to connect the pieces, because Byron told me that he saw the male partner. Together. That gave me a bit of an insight. And then the female partner also shares a component of MS. So, it's more complex in so many ways.
And it might also help with the third piece that I was going to say, which is around how you got triggered by it, right? On the one hand, we have our own sensitivities, and as we get closer to couples and individuals, we can get triggered by different things, especially if it's unresolved stuff. But sometimes it doesn't matter. You could be fully secure, and the intensity of a behavior will trigger anyone, right? So it's not one or the other. It's obviously going to be some kind of combination of both, right? And as you're working more and more with them, right, you're also 15 sessions is a lot, right? You have whatever relationship you have built with them. That's that gets built up over time, right? You can't help but care and connect, and part of that's actually really useful in getting them to do certain things, take certain risks, because now they're trusting you. And part of that is they're not just going to trust someone on the first session to take certain risks, right? But so that's just another thing to to keep in mind as well, to help maybe normalize or validate that, you know, now you know where it can go and know what your limits are and what you're able to tolerate, not tolerate, so that you can, we can maybe, I'll keep that in mind when we watch the video, and we can see where we could have maybe stepped in and modulated or kind of transmute that energy into what you said earlier, which is what we're trying to get her to do is access her primary. And if we don't, and especially after so many sessions, it can get frustrating, right? There's expectations that people have, understandably so, around the progress they're looking, the outcomes, right, that they're looking to achieve. And sometimes that can add up. So, you know, either they stop coming or they just, you know, get frustrated, right? And so I don't know if that's part of it, but there needs to be outlets, and going primary is a really good outlet, because she may be aware of all her primary feelings, but she's also detached from them, right, is what it sounds like. So that keeps you at arm's length from those primary emotions, and it allows, you know, that sort of, not to label it controlling, but not about controlling the other person, but controlling her need or her difficulty to go primary. Going secondary is a secondary way to get your needs met, right? And even actually talk of needs is part of that. Talk of needs at this point is actually not ideal, because if you're triggering your other partner to shut down, you're talking about needs, that's not helpful, right? Talking of needs needs to come up once both sides are very, very safe and very, very aware of what's going on for the other person. Until then, and that's stage 2 stuff, right? Until then, talking about needs for a pursuer especially is just part of their coping. It's a part of their behavior to direct and to not have to go primary, right? Yeah. We'll get more into that, I think, if you can get them to stage 2, but getting them there is going to be first and foremost. And one of the main things is going to be to be able to get her to primary, to really connect to what it is that she's talking about, but not really allowing to come to the surface, right? So that's what I would say about that. And they go hand in hand with, you know, with the things that she did that ended up triggering you, right? And so I have a sense of what it is, but yeah, maybe we can get to that piece around what it is you're kind of looking for around feedback from watching this video. And I'll keep in mind as well how to keep you safe in future sessions.
Thank you so much, Ofir. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I will first show you the piece with like the meltdown when it's picking, and that's when also you will see just the beginning of where I actually intervene. And I don't know if I feel like I intervened maybe too late, but I also felt like the client wanted to get it out. So it would be great to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah. And
whether I should have maybe stepped in earlier when she was saying something specific in the middle of that emotional.
Well, hindsight's 2020, right? Now that you know the results, you know it should have been earlier, and so you're saying that, I think.
Yeah.
But how could you have known at the time, right?
Yeah. No, I was really like
you called it. You thought it was catharsis, right? You thought it would lead to her calming down, right?
Yeah, that was the idea, but yeah, it was difficult. It was really difficult even to ground her. And also I had to think of being very mindful of her counseling competence, because she's very sensitive to that. So I kind of had to like bake it into my grounding. So I will show you that piece. And then as I get her to calm down, because we stay with her for almost the entire session, the male partner gets a bit of time in the end. I also wanted to show you where I actually got her to give me some two specific events. Like I wasn't even expecting two specific. I thought she wouldn't be able to give them to me, but she actually gave me specific events, and kind of like how we break that down. And obviously it was very difficult for me because I was already like, you know, breathing heavily. It's going to be audio. So I will just probably once we've heard the first piece, I will jump to the next one once we can analyze it. So.
Okay. So the first piece you're going to show is the sort of quote unquote meltdown, or
yes. So we're not gonna.
are you able to go like maybe even like a minute before that, just so I can see the lead up to it?
Oh, absolutely. I could. And
Yeah,
it's
okay.
you know just gonna you're gonna see, because it actually lasted for a while, and that's what makes me like, okay, what would I do with it? I was listening to it again today, and
Exactly. That's kind of what I want to get at, to see, you know, it's always a dynamic. So either things we're
yeah,
doing or not doing, because it's not always doing, is escalating it, or sometimes reinforcing the secondary behavior, which then ramps it up.
yeah,
And even you, I'm sure, watching back, you can even think of what you could have done differently, right?
yeah,
Because even just watching it back from a secure kind of detached place after the fact is gives you a lot. But good on you for one, choosing this to, you know, show, and two, to even be able to watch it back. I know that wouldn't be probably wasn't very easy to watch that back, considering how you felt it went.
Yeah, definitely that piece on like me intervening earlier and kind of like not allowing her to get to that level of distress is something I'm kind of like, I've accepted that. I've missed the opportunity to actually do it, but yeah, I'll let you listen to it. I'm not really sure now. I'll just go a bit earlier here. And
What happened at the 16-minute or so mark?
So my sessions with them always start with a check-in. Both of them get up to max 5 minutes to just rate where they are at and quickly what stands behind it. And from there on, we go into specific like events and specific patterns. And that's kind of been our tradition.
And on that note, when you say rate where they're at, are you talking in the context of their relationship specifically, or?
Just their well-being, how they are feeling, how they felt this last week since our last session, because it's just to kind of like give them the space to also like let me know how, you know, where they are at with anything, because it could be also something related to the kids, and sometimes that plays a role and gives me a little bit of insight on like, okay, there's another stressor that's outside. So I do it.
So one quick tip that might be helpful. I think that's fine. I wouldn't spend too much time there, but one thing that you want to get in order to help dictate where the session goes is one thing that they took away from last session that they try to implement in the week or in between sessions, that they noted, either that or an insight that they took. So the purpose of it is just to kind of see their understanding of EFT or your treatment, and to see sometimes there's gaps in there, and it helps kind of solidify or crystallize what they're doing well and not doing well, or where there's the room for growth. So one thing I like to ask is, so leaving last week, give me something that you've noticed or you took away that you were able to implement this week, and how did that go, right? And it can always, it sets the frame right that way, right? Not so much as a homework assignment, but as a consciously or unconsciously, what did you try to do, right? And sometimes the purpose of it is not even positive or negative, but I pull away a positive from it. So even if it's like the smallest thing, I reinforce like, wow, okay, and how did you, and then I might check in with the other, and did you notice that they were doing that, and what was that like, and kind of reinforcing the other partner for that. Even though it's not perfect, like you have to be able to do it horribly and stupidly, but it's moving away from what you were doing before. That was unconscious, right? Something like that. So the idea is to start with something like that, which ends up being a positive, and then moving away to like what we can work on this session. So it's okay to start with individual, but then also tie it into the couple, and from a positive sense or from a practical sense.
This is great. Actually, I like that. That would probably have helped me also this session. Because
exactly, and that's why I do it. And if they have nothing, then I might just say, what was it like leaving last time? And tell me one thing that was good that happened this week that you noticed, whether it's an insight or something you noticed from the other person. Just give me something positive, right? You know, there's always something, right? In a whole week or 2 weeks, there's always something that you can frame as a positive. And if you can't, then there's that's a problem, or that's also good to know. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I actually will start doing that. We'll see
And then
how.
you go to the other person, and if they start to bring in some of the negative, I go, oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Well, the whole rest of the session will be that. I just want to start off with this, and then they'll get into the routine each session. They'll know that that's the expectation.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. Definitely.
It's not to say, oh no, we can't talk about that, but oh, I'm going to note that down. Maybe we can start with that once we move through the first section. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so there's
All right, let's do it.
a long passage. Here we go.
Okay.
And please let me know how you hear it too. I shared this sound.
I just like I just
Pause for a sec.
there's no
I can already tell, just to very quickly, this is not primary. So if on the spectrum of I want to be careful because we're recording, on the spectrum of primary, let's say primary is on the left side, and in the middle you've got like being able to talk about primary but in a calm way, but not really be congruent with it, or congruent with it's a good word. And then on the other hand, being like removed from it and almost distorting primary, this is what I would call that, right? It's on the level of if you listen to her, you have no idea what she's going through. She's just distressed, as you said, but it's secondary. She's been like my hypothesis would be, in her life, she was reinforced for this level of engagement from 3 seconds of listening to that, right? And it's abstract in a way, right? It's not what is actually going on for her. And for whatever reason, in her life growing up, being primary, being vulnerable, being soft was not received well. But this was. And that's why she goes there. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But underneath it, there's a primary experience that's driving it always. But she doesn't feel safe to go there at this point.
Yeah. That sounds...
Or in this moment, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
like.
I hear you, Ellie.
And then somehow he decided that I was a bully because I told him to shut up. And
pause there.
That was me bullying him. And then now it was about the fact that I was angry.
So I'll say two things. So one is, if you get to watch an interaction between them, this is sometimes helpful. And then you stop, you maybe let it go on for no more than 30 seconds, even 30 seconds is a long time, but you get to see the interplay, right? This can be helpful, but not, to do once in a while, to let it go, make some notes, note down how they impacted each other. This is different. She's already off, right? In her, like, sometimes I call it her tape recorder, unconscious triggered mode, right? As soon as I get something like what she just said, which is a label on his mental state, I would stop it. Because that could be really triggering for him. And not stopping it means that he's not going to be there. Even if you could get her primary working with her, he's not going to be there for that. He's going to be somewhere else because he's having to cope by his coping, which is, as you said, a withdrawer will shut down. So she won't be able to hear anything because it's already got some attack in there, some labeling of hidden. So I would intervene basically right away in that, right? And I would want to know, what is it that she saw from what he did, whatever it is that she's talking about, that leads to her interpretation that, what was it again that she just said, that he, whatever it was.
Yeah,
it was a label.
Yes, she described a situation from the day before where they would just get into that argument because she would say, I don't feel loved,
Yeah.
I don't feel
But
loved.
specifically, what did she just say about his intention? That he was, maybe go back 3-4 seconds.
Yeah, just 1 second here. Let me see. Oh no, I skipped it. Sorry.
To bring up the fact that I had told him something in the past. I don't even remember what it was because I was so disconnected by then, by being attacked. And then he goes
Okay, that's
and
good.
he grabs
Pause.
his foot.
Even that, being attacked, right? Now, and of course, in the way that she's doing it too, again, I don't think any of this is conscious. The point is, conscious or unconscious, is it effective? Is it gonna achieve what she's wanting this to achieve? No, right? Because if she was to talk to him that way, I'm attacked. Like, so even just that label, like you're attacking me or I'm attacked. And in this way, what is he going to hear from that? Where connect me, where that connects to her underlying experience, right? So let's just use that. So even if she says I'm attacked, I would maybe stop her. Oh, let me just understand what it is that you're talking about, because I'm lost or something like that, right? So you say you're attacked. Can you give me what is it that he did, said, how he did it, how, like, what's the facial expressions on the nonverbals that told you that you were attacked? I want to know. You're just plugging into the one moment, whatever it is, right? So he did something. She ended up perceiving it as he's attacking me, right? So you get the thing, you get the trigger, right? And then you go, you think that you're attacked. Let's dive into what that's like for you. There's so much in there that you can, in any one of these points, you can just, that's your entry point. Right? So you go, oh, so the perception, the experience was this sense of being attacked. Oh, that sounds horrible, right? Let's open that up and let's get her to connect to that. What's it like to think your partner of X years is attacking you? Now already we're going to get to that primary place, right? Or what's the thoughts that go on in your head when you think that when you're perceiving that he's attacking you? I don't have to even know what he did necessarily, but to give you context, it helps, right? Right? And it's not to challenge it, it's just to understand it. It's to really learn, what does it feel like to be attacked, right? What's the thought process? Like, what is the thinking that happens in this moment when you think you're attacked by him, right? So I'm just going to kind of highlight all these opportunities. So maybe we can play and I'll be like, oh, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity. There's so many, right? Each of these I would independently, I would be not interjecting, but just trying to understand, right? Which requires you to stop her and get her to connect to what it is that she's describing. Right now, as she's talking, you know, when we think of individuals, and I sort of sometimes allude to it as like circling the drain, when they're kind of talking about an experience and they're talking around it and you never really get to see them and what it is that they're experiencing it. And then they'll just move on to the next thing. They didn't really get to flesh any of it out. No pun intended, because we're talking about a toilet. But but this is the same thing, but through its sound. See, the thing that's that I can see is almost alluring in a pursuer like her is that it sounds like emotions, right? And it is emotions, but that's why we differentiate between secondary and primary. Primary pull attachment figures in, and secondary generally trigger them, right? Yeah. But it's sustainable. The reason it's sustainable is her secondary gets her a indirect way of her, like a substitute way of getting her needs met. In the same way like that a drug would. He'll be compliant, right? He'll do the things when she goes into this mode. Eventually, if she pushes for it, she'll get the response that she wants on paper. But it's going to be through fear. It's going to be through power. He's going to do it out of a place of like defeat, right? And that's gonna lead to resentment, right? And she
Yeah.
on some level knows that.
Yeah.
And it's like no different. If I eat junk food, if that's my coping, it's a substitute. I'll fill my feelings up for the moment. I won't feel the pain, but I'm not going to be proud of it later. I'm not going to, if it's part of my cycle of let's say like abusing, junk food, I'm going to feel shame around it, which is then going to drive the next day and the next day. It's a cycle. This is no different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And that's how I feel also about that moment overall, because obviously it shut him down and I was watching both of them and it was so clear. And once I moved on to him and she had a bathroom break, he just said, yeah, it feels like it's always my fault. And then we go again into, the cycle.
Even if you notice him shutting down, looking away, you can actually move away from whatever it is she's talking about and talk about how she's talking about it.
Yeah,
That makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's what Corey talked to me about, and yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk this way, so you would go something like, "I noticed this is how you're talking." Describe it very, very loosely with no connotation. So like, or even you can say, "Hey, I noticed when you talk this way." And then you go to him and you go, "I noticed that you look away. I noticed you look down. I noticed that you kind of have a look on your face," right?
Mm.
Can you tell me about that? What are you experiencing right now as she talks to you in this way? She probably has no awareness of the actual experience that it's causing in him, or not causing is a bad word, that it's like a catalyst for in him. And she thinks because it's sustainable, the cycle, she's getting a secondary need met. She thinks and because it's habitual in her whole life, like this is what she does, it's sustainable, and so it eventually gets something, right? But if she has no awareness of another path, of what going primary will do, how amazing that transition for him will be, and also then therefore for her, if what she wants is to be heard, what she wants is to feel loved, right? Which is a big piece of what I'm hearing from her, right? Is around, thinking that he doesn't care because it's coming from I'm unlovable, right? If he goes soft and gets a good response from him, that'll be like a magical experience for her. Because it's a new door. It's not saying what you're doing right now is wrong. It's that kind of like what you're really saying is, if you go this way, look at how much better that goes for him. Therefore, it goes better for you. And it's a direct route. Yes, it's very scary to do that because your childhood told you not to do that, and it led to a lot of pain. But as you're kind of giving her mini risk points to leap from, starting at a very easy one to moving on to a very hard one, or it's always sort of hard in a way because it's a small risk each time.
Mm-hmm.
But finding what that tolerance for her is, and that really all that takes is you just being able to even start with him. Because if he can stand up for his own shutdown and his own sense of overwhelm, and he can share that and how it's like in the room, when we don't need any past event, all we need is, this is what it's like for him right now when you talk this way, right? Which is not what you want for him to feel. You want him to hear you, and instead he's shutting down to protect himself, which is a lose-lose really. There's no win-win in there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you turn to him and you go and you uncover what it's like right now in this moment when she talks to you this way, and he was to maybe say to you, just like what he said, is, I'm hearing I'm doing something wrong. I'm hearing it's all my fault, which in some ways is what she's saying, but in some ways it's his childhood as well. That's his sensitivity.
Yeah.
Right? What's that like to hear everything's your fault? Oh my God, I feel so overwhelmed. All I could do is shut down, right? Yeah, and already I believe it, so I don't do anything. I just kind of sit there and take it. And if he can share that sense of overwhelm, and she can go, oh man, that was not my intention. I just want to be heard. And by talking this way, I'm getting so overwhelmed. And she can maybe empathize with him around that with compassion. And already it moves her from this mode to that mode. And then you can talk to her about, you know, something that will allow her to connect. But see, when you're noticing something in the room, you really need to follow it, because otherwise this now becomes the place where they just act out what they already do at home, and then it's really no different. Right? Yeah. So they need a new experience, a different experience from what they're used to, and a more primary one, where in the room, when he's triggered, you can see it and you can give a voice to it and you can have him connect to it and share it, and vice versa. When she's triggered, you get underneath it and give her a new door where she can softly be able to share it and get a different response. Because there's no benefit to letting her, I know you had thought at the time, which is understandable around catharsis, but this is a unit. The real catharsis that's actually effective will come when she can go out this other door and actually get the thing that will meet her real needs. Or the thing that secondary thing is meant to achieve, to have them turn to her and really show caring and show love. That's never going to work with this sort of secondary approach. But you give her a new door and give her a few times where she can share that. Then when he can respond to that in a way that is actually very, like, if he can sort of say, wow, you know, when you share this way, I am not scared, I'm not shut down, I'm not overwhelmed, it makes me want to be there for you, right? I can actually see what's really going on for you. Boom, light bulb opens for her, and she goes, okay, now I get it. It doesn't matter the hundreds of years of the millions of books I read, none of that matters, because everyone has their blind spot, and this is her clear blind spot, that she goes into autopilot, does this, and that completely disconnects her from her thinking brain when she's triggered, right? Takes her to a primal state, and that was programmed a long time ago.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what happened there.
And
it makes total sense. So I guess, like, in this next passage, I just want to show you, like, how I am so conscious of validating her, to the point where I actually, it's just, when I listen to it, it's just like, oh my God, why would you say that?
So in the moment you're trying to help her, so what do you think is more powerful in terms of achieving your goal, right? What's your goal of validating her? Like in the moment when you're validating her, what's your goal? To help her calm down, or to
honestly, if I think about it, and I reflected on it a lot since that session, there must be some counter-transference, because I literally want to make her be satisfied about, like, just be happy in the moment, like be calm,
but not so mad.
So there is something going on there, and, like, as I also mentioned, like, talked about it to Corey when I realized it, and kind of like started addressing her body language and making her more aware of it, and kind of helping myself to cope with how she behaves in the sessions and how it's affecting me. But there is definitely something triggering me and making me, like, wanting to just, calm things down so that she's happy.
And in individual therapy, that will work. Problem is, in couples therapy, the thing that is driving this behavior, the secondary, is not you. It's her partner, and she wants you to know how much that is the case. And what will make her happy is her taking a risk and seeing that risk works, right? And ultimately, in other words, he is the only thing that can make her happy. The issue is with attachment. You're not an attachment figure, not a strong one yet, or it's not your goal to be a strong attachment figure. It's your goal to be a secure base from which it's safe to take risks, emotional risks, right? And it's helpful to be, to some extent, a safe attachment figure for that. But just the space of feeling safe, you're not going to be the person that's going to make her happy in the context that you framed it. It's going to be his response. So it's going to be you helping facilitate her softening, so that energy is now soft enough, let's say, primary enough for him to respond in a primary way back, in a wanting to wrap his arms around her and wanting to reassure her and wanting to make her pain go away. It's not going to be you, right? Our job in EFT is to facilitate them, especially in stage 1. And that's why I think getting ahead of it in the future with her, with him, it won't be such a big issue. Actually, that's not necessarily true. If you spend too long with the withdrawer, it will trigger the pursuer. So it is important to be efficient with the withdrawer as well. But with the withdrawer, it's really just about building safety and confidence, and sometimes language to connect to their feelings, to their more primary feelings. But with the pursuer, it's a lot of times we have to slow them down, right? And there's a lot of energy, and if you're a withdrawer yourself, that's going to ramp you up, right? If you're a pursuer yourself, it's not a big issue because you really relate to them and you get it, right? So, but if you're a withdrawer yourself, it'll bring up that countertransference of like, this person's almost attacking me. And so I feel like I have to make them happy, which is exactly the dialogue, the internal dialogue of a withdrawer. They overcompensate by working harder, and you don't have to work that hard really. At the end of the day, you just have to either catch it early enough, or if you can't catch it early enough, you have to take a more directive stance, a stance where you go, oh, okay, we've lost our path, let's start over. That's okay. You can take control over the situation, right? And almost all pursuers will respect that. You kind of meeting them, matching their energy.
Absolutely. Just gotta work on that for sure, because I know it's a tough one. Sorry for my son in the background. He just woke up from his nap, the nanny, and they are a bit loud. But here it is where I think this was the second. So I just wanted to give you guys 3650. It says.
So if you can only take, if you take one thing away from what I said is maybe two things. One is just to get ahead of it, because you can see it didn't take me very long to pick out one or two things to be able to use as an entry point for her, right?
Yeah.
The moment someone gets triggered, that's all you need, because now you're not talking about what happened this week. Once you're triggered, you're triggered in the room. You literally need to think of like, what's happening right now, and bring that to them. What's happening? What just happened that triggered you, essentially, is the question. What do you perceive? What do you remember him doing? Or multiple things, but just pick one, and then bring that into her awareness. Oh, so he just did this thing. Doesn't matter, consciously, unconsciously, right? Or often as a reaction to what you did, right? It's a dance, right? It's a figure eight. And we're just freezing this moment, going, let's try to open it up. That's all we're trying to do, is what's happening right now? What is it that you perceived? And then slowing it down, and like, what did you perceive him doing? What's the intention you're hearing from it? What did you think to yourself? When you think that to yourself right now, what's it like? It's two paths. The first path is the secondary, which she's already very familiar with. Lots of energy, lots of like dramatized, like distress. And the second path is, finding that perception, which has nothing to do with him, right? The idea of stage 1 EFT is moving away from what just happened as far as the trigger to now, what's your internal dialogue, and then how's that leading to an experience that has nothing to do with him and what he did, right? It has everything to do with your attachment figure did something, right? Which now is triggering a very old wound. Let's talk about that wound. That's much easier for him to hear than you. And that's what he's going to hear if it's all about him. So it's all about owning, this is my experience in relation to him doing this one thing. But this is all about me. right? And if we make all the energy go outward about him, he's going to get triggered, and then you're missing that opportunity to go primary. Okay? So again, getting ahead of it and finding the one little entry point. That's what you need. And there's lots. So the moment it gets sort of over the top like that, you want to slow it down and pick the moment that you noticed. And again, if you lose the moments and you're, let's say, struggling yourself, then you ask questions. You stop her and you ask questions like, I don't know what happened. A second ago we were talking and now you're very escalated. You're very, let's try to learn what just happened. I'm going to be very curious. Let's find out together. What do you remember him doing, right? Ideally, you're catching it. But if not, then again, you pause and you let them tell you what it is. Maybe they don't remember it. You catch up to what they do remember, right? Okay, you don't remember what he did. Now you're huffing and puffing and you're really upset, right? What kind of thoughts are going on in your head right now, right? Already it's about you because I'm asking you about your internal world and it's not about him anymore. But all the things that are coming up are the past things he did, which you interpreted in a certain way. You took it as that way, even though they might not actually mean those things. But because of your history, that's the lens you're seeing everything through, right? Because what does it mean to be attacked, right? It's a very ambiguous word. If you ask 100 people, they might tell you 100 different answers, right? It might be, shot with an Uzi. It could be stabbed. It could be yelled at. Anything could be attacked, right? Right. But the internal experience is what we're after, not the actual thing so much. But knowing the actual thing allows you to connect, to have the context of what, and especially if it's something where you were in the room with them, you know exactly what it is they're talking about. This is why you don't need the story of the week, because you were there. And in this couple, you won't really ever need the story of the week because there's always going to be things there. Even you asking the first question of like, what went well this week, there's probably going to be daggers in there from one or both of them, or at least that they're going to hear as daggers. And you can use that. Ooh, I noticed something happened. So here's another good rule of thumb. Follow the energy, right? Sue calls it music, right? The music is the emotion. Follow it. If you ignore it, it's like you're suppressing it. It's going to come up later and it's going to be louder and secondary. But if you follow it and you're, like I said, getting ahead of it and you're very curious about it, that's going to lead to the primary place. You're making space for it. You're not ignoring it, right? You're just making space for it. It really, it takes some courage at first because you're almost like knocking on the door of pain, but not knocking on the door will get you it anyways. And it's going to be in a more like violent sort of way, or what did you call it? What's the word you used? I wrote it down.
It was violent, yeah, violent.
Meltdown, meltdown and violent, yeah. Yeah, and that's what you'll get, yeah. Especially with a pursuer that, that has to hold on to this all the time. Yeah. So, yeah, but yeah, let's play. If oh my God, it's already 2:55. Time flies. We can play for another minute if you like.
That feeling of being loved. I know that might be tremendously difficult right now. But let me try here, okay? And that's just because I would like to understand a little bit more. When you think about this past week, or like in between our sessions, again, we meet kind of in the middle. And outside that situation where you guys actually confronted, when it became so vocal and so violent. Can you, Ellie, recall, just as an example, one situation?
Yeah, let's pause here. We won't have time for that.
Could be
But
something that Brendan said.
what I'll say is, around that, I don't know what's going on for her in this moment, but I get the sense that you're doing a lot of work still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm treading carefully. Like I'm so, and you can hear my breathing. I was breathing so heavily.
Yeah.
Kind of like, holy crap, like lots of things happen.
Yeah, it's like after the adrenaline dump, right? You're not wanting to get back there again. Yeah. So yeah, the main thing, again, getting ahead of it, noticing it. Now you know it's not going to lead to catharsis. What in essence you're doing by trying to validate it, you're enabling it. You're telling that form of coping that it's going to get attention if it does more of that, right? That's how I see it. Whereas getting underneath it, moving primary is going to be challenging, but you've had 15 sessions now. You don't have to get very deep, right? Even if the first time you do it, you just get to the place like, it's so painful that all I know how to do is get really loud. Own that as an experience. I don't know what to do. It just comes over me. Same way for a withdrawer. I don't know what happens. I just shut down. That's okay. So when I'm perceiving something as everything I'm doing is wrong from my partner, that they're saying nothing I do can make them happy, which you can obviously contrast with their goal of making the other person happy, which is a nice thing to highlight. But if they can even own their coping, that's huge as a first step. When this happens, this is what I do. It's a huge accountability piece. And it's especially when it's like uncontrollable, this is what my body does. This is just all I know how to do. Right? And doing anything other than that is really hard. And that's okay. That's good. Now you're getting to fear. So yeah, so just anything around, that's a good first, what we call light sliver, like a baby step, right? Beyond that, sometimes another baby step is, yeah, it's really not fun to think for her, let's say, to think that he doesn't care, if that's the underlying thought, right? It's not fun. Okay, let's open up not fun. Oh no, I can't, it's too hard. Okay, it's really scary to talk about your primary feelings. Yeah, it's really scary. Can you turn to him? Can you let him know? No, there's no way I can do that. Okay, we know how scary it is now. It's very scary to turn to him and to really be open about that. Okay, what about for you? What's it like for you, going to him and seeing how scary it is for her to even touch on this different way of being, different way of talking? Oh, this is a new person. I've never seen this before. Oh, okay. This is new information. This is a new for you. What's it like for you to see her this way? And it'll be easier for him to say, oh, this is, if she could do this, yeah, this isn't threatening. Could be there for that. I would want to hear that. Interesting. Can you let her know that? Okay. So when you share this way, even when you don't share it all with me, but I can see how scary this is for you when I'm perceiving fear in you in approaching me, that's not scary. That's, safe. I could be open to that. All right. And then what's it like for you to see this is how he responds to something like this? Okay. Okay. Brings the fear down. Okay. You feel you can go deeper now? You process a little bit more, but can you actually look at him and share how scary this is? Now that even not sharing it, even me sharing it for you, that kind of thing, external sharing, that goes well. Is that easier now to look at him and to turn to him and say, yeah, this, feeling this stuff and looking at you and sharing it's really, really hard. And then it's the same thing. What's that like for you to see? And then you have him return and share what it's like to hear things that way. And so you're just creating layers. And if it's too much, that doesn't mean stop. It just means like make the steps smaller. If you do get, for example, to some sadness around these messages, and then you go, well, can you turn to him and share that? Oh, absolutely not. Okay. Can you share the fear of sharing it? No, absolutely not. See, there's always like a smaller step that even though they were able to share with you, you're able to see it, they can't look at their partner. That's how you know you're getting on the right track. They were able to share looking at you as the attachment figure, but when their real attachment figure, when the thought of sharing it with them, no way, right? So good. They feel safe enough with you and their partner in the room, right? And then so you're building that that confidence, the resiliency by still doing some kind of enactment and hearing back from the other partner, which again is the source of both their pain, not actually them, but it's because they channel the original attachment figure, their parents usually, but they're also the source of their resiliency, of the healing, to be able to, bye Sila, they're also the source of what can heal them because of the fact that they're the attachment figure. So even when they don't share themselves, they're still sharing because they're allowing themselves to drop down, or even that first step of owning their coping, their secondary. That's still really helpful, because if they can see what that type of sharing, even though it's one direction with you, how that impacts their partner, when they receive that message back, it's almost always extremely surprising that they're, because probably for her, taking accountability for her coping has never led to a good response. It's led to punishment and that kind of thing, right? For a lot of people, right? Like it's connected to shame and that kind of thing. It's not connected to healthy experiences, which is what you're trying to create. You're trying to create, things in their development that they didn't get, or that they got the wrong version of, the hurting, the damaging version of, and you're trying to create, you're plugging into that development, and then you're having the attachment figure be able to give them the healing around those moments, right? That's really what you're doing.
Yeah, no, this is so helpful, just to kind of zoom out a little bit. And I really like what you said about just the coping, because it was out there in the moment, and I kind of like went with it instead of stopping it and kind of like refocusing. So that's really good for me to.
Where you put your attention is what's going to grow.
Yeah, no, this was it, and I kind of like missed it. I got too engaged. I was in the moment, and I couldn't see the bigger picture in the moment when that was happening. And I thought, I gotta let her get it out and validate to the point where I'm like, I'm feeling like I need to attend to the other person, and I haven't. So that went off the rails there.
So you can watch it back kind of with this lens now, like how important it is to reach to get ahead of it. But and also the last thing I would say is, to make it really, really simple, if what you're seeing in front of you is secondary, is what you would call coping, or actually make it even simpler, not primary. Anything that's not primary, you want to pay attention to it. You want to label it in your head at what it is. And then you want to give the you want to stop the secondary and ask about what's the primary underneath. That's the idea. So if it's not primary, it's going to be damaging to the other partner. Not really damaging because it's what they're already used to, but it's not helpful. The nicest way to put it is it's not helpful. So if it's not primary, you want to find a way to get it there. Don't let the secondary go on too long.
Makes sense there. Just got like exactly. I got kind of stuck there, but I can't let it escalate as I
and validating is not going to bring it down. What will bring it down is, I'm not saying it won't. In individual therapy it will, but because the partner's there, and then there's new things that add to it, that's why the validating doesn't work. But what does is curiosity about the primary. That's what you're like, what is really going on? You know, what is really happening right now? It's like, to me, it's like what you're showing me is a distorted version of it. I want to see the real thing. Show me the real thing. That's kind of, I'm targeted at like, oh, this is secondary. Okay, I know it's secondary. So let's be curious, let's drive, and let's try to, my agenda essentially is to expose the primary in a safe way. And different people, different things will work, but you're kind of saying, no, that's not what I'm after. And that's not what you're already comfortable doing this, right? She's already comfortable being this way. This isn't a challenge for her. You're wanting her to challenge herself. That's what therapy and EFT is. It's about connecting to your feelings that you disowned in a way, right? They're like, nope, can't go there. I'll go, I'm safe in my bubble, I'm safe in my coping, I'll do that. But if that's all you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you've always been getting. Nothing's going to change. Not in your dynamic with your partner, and also not internally. Because if he responds to anger, then you know that anger works, but you also don't want him. You don't want to have to get angry in order for him to respond to you.
So for pursuer, it will be really all about like grounding them in primary feelings where they can talk about them calmly. And for the withdrawer, it will be to actually bring those emotions out. It feels like they kind of want that moment where they
basically, yeah, grounding's a good word. In EFT we call it softening the pursuer and shoring up the withdrawer. Same idea. You shore them up. In both cases, you're trying to pull out the primary emotions either way. But yeah, you can think of the pursuers, you're bringing them down, and the withdrawer, you're bringing them up. But the primary emotions look the same in both people. Once they're out and once you see them, they look the same. Okay.
Wow, yeah. So much to think about. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you, Ofir. Because it's really,
try to distill it down, like follow the white rabbit, follow the thing that you need to, it's follow the music, follow the emotions, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I was just out of it. So I already like kind of processing that, what happened there for me, and really kind of being there for them. Kind of guarding that safe space, which I didn't really last week. I feel like I let it go loose. But
it's a really good case because I've talked to her as well, and I know how she is a little bit. And in my role, I have to be more firm with her. She was, maybe I'll pause here.
Yeah.
There we go. So that's it.
Yeah.
Stop it.